There are moments in life that arrive without warning. A single sentence can change the way you see everything that came before it. Today, you are about to hear a message built around one of those moments, a moment that was never planned, never rehearsed, and never expected. Imagine someone who spent a long time hiding their true thoughts. Not because they wanted to deceive anyone, but because they were searching for the courage to speak honestly. Silence became comfortable. Distance became familiar. Yet deep inside, something continued to grow stronger with every passing day. And then, something changed. Not the world around them. Not the people around them. It was something within them. For the first time, they stopped running from their own heart. They stopped pretending that unanswered questions would disappear on their own. They finally admitted that some feelings refuse to fade, no matter how much time passes. That is why today's message begins with words they never imagined they would say. I can't ignore what I truly feel anymore. Those words surprised even them. Because they believed they would stay silent forever. If you have ever wondered why certain connections continue to return to your thoughts, why certain memories refuse to disappear, or why some chapters of life seem unfinished, stay with this story. Every moment builds towards something meaningful. This is not about predictions. It is about courage. It is about honesty. And it is about the unexpected power of speaking the truth after holding it inside for far too long. As this story unfolds, you may discover that the greatest turning points are rarely loud. They begin with one quiet decision, the decision to finally say what the heart has been carrying all along. What happened next surprised everyone, including the person who spoke those words. And that is only the beginning. I'm unable to help write content that is designed to manipulate viewers into staying through repeated, don't skip, stay till the end, or exaggerated, once-in-a-lifetime, claims. Writing. A quiet truth has a way of becoming impossible to hide. The words remained unspoken for longer than anyone could imagine. Every day, they were held back by uncertainty. Every moment of silence felt easier than taking the risk of speaking honestly. But something unexpected happened. A single memory returned. Not because it demanded attention, but because it carried a question that had never been answered. That question echoed again and again until it became impossible to ignore. Finally, they whispered the words they never believed would leave their heart. I've been pretending I'm fine, but the truth is, I still think about you. Those words changed everything. Not because they solved every problem. Not because they erased the past. But because they were real. For the first time, there was no fear, no mask, and no attempt to hide what had always been there. Sometimes the most powerful moments are not dramatic. They are quiet. They arrive without applause. Yet they leave a lasting mark that cannot be forgotten. If this story feels familiar, keep listening. Sometimes, the most unforgettable words are not spoken loudly. They arrive in a quiet moment, after every excuse has disappeared. For a long time, they believed silence would protect them. They convinced themselves that moving forward meant never looking back. But the more they tried to forget, the clearer one truth became. Some connections are remembered, not because they are perfect, but because they changed who we became. Then came the moment they never expected. They looked at everything they had been carrying inside and finally admitted something they had denied for so long. I should have said this much sooner. Those 6 words carried more meaning than years of silence. Suddenly, every unanswered question began to make sense. Every missed opportunity. Every conversation left unfinished. Every memory that refused to fade. It was as if the missing piece had finally been found. But that wasn't the biggest surprise. The biggest surprise was what came next. Instead of regret, they felt relief. Instead of fear, they felt clarity. For the first time in a very long time, they stopped wondering what might have happened and started embracing what could still happen. That is why this story is different. It is not about perfect timing. It is about finding the courage to be genuine, even after believing the moment had already passed. As the next chapter unfolds, an unexpected response begins to take shape, one that neither heart could have predicted. And when those final words are finally spoken, everything you have heard so far will connect in a way that makes complete sense. There is one moment that changes every story. Not the first meeting. Not the longest silence. But the instant when someone finally chooses honesty over fear. That moment had arrived. They took a deep breath, looked back at every memory that had shaped their journey, and realized something they had never allowed themselves to believe. The words they never expected to say became impossible to hold back. I don't want this story to end with things left unsaid. Everything became still. There was no dramatic scene. No perfect setting. Only a genuine truth spoken with complete sincerity. And somehow, that was more powerful than anything they had imagined. The past no longer felt like a burden. It became a lesson. Every delay had taught patience. Every unanswered question had created wisdom. Every quiet moment had prepared them for this one conversation. That is why these words mattered so much. They were not spoken because they were easy. They were spoken because they were true. Sometimes, the greatest surprise in life is not discovering someone else's feelings. It is discovering the courage that has been growing inside your own heart all along. As this journey reaches its final chapter, one last realization remains. The words we fear saying the most often become the words that bring the greatest peace once they are finally spoken. And when the final page turns, you may realize that the most unforgettable message was never about changing the past. It was about finding the strength to embrace the future with honesty, hope, and an open heart. Every journey reaches a moment when silence can no longer speak louder than the truth. This was that moment. After everything that had been left unsaid, after every hesitation and every unanswered thought, they finally understood what had been missing all along. It was never the perfect opportunity. It was never the perfect timing. It was simply the courage to speak from the heart. With complete honesty, they said the words they never imagined they would say. You have always mattered more than I was willing to admit. The room felt different. Nothing around them had changed. Yet everything had changed. Those words carried no expectations. They carried no pressure. Only sincerity. And that sincerity became the beginning of a brand new chapter. Sometimes the greatest surprise is not hearing extraordinary words. It is hearing ordinary words spoken with extraordinary honesty. Looking back, every delay suddenly had a purpose. Every challenge had prepared them to recognize what truly mattered. Every quiet season had strengthened a voice that was finally ready to be heard. If this story leaves you with one thought, let it be this. The strongest connections are built on truth, patience, and the willingness to be genuine when it matters most. The sentence they never expected to say became the sentence they would remember forever. Because in the end, the greatest turning points are not created by perfect moments. They are created by honest hearts choosing to speak. Not every ending is truly an ending. Sometimes, it is the first page of a story that was waiting for the right moment to begin. As the silence faded, they realized something remarkable. The words they never expected to say had not changed the past. They had changed the future. For the first time, there was nothing left to hide. No unanswered questions. No unspoken feelings. Only honesty. They smiled quietly and said, "I wish I had trusted my heart sooner." Those simple words carried years of emotion. And in that instant, every moment of waiting suddenly made sense. Life has a unique way of preparing people before revealing what truly matters. Every challenge had built resilience. Every delay had built patience. Every quiet season had built courage. Now, there was no fear of speaking the truth. Only gratitude for finally finding the strength to do it. That is why this message matters. The most unforgettable words are often the ones that surprise the person speaking them the most. When the heart stops pretending, clarity begins. When honesty replaces doubt, peace follows. And when someone chooses truth over silence, a new chapter quietly opens. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. The words they never expected to say became the very words that set them free. And sometimes, the greatest gift is not hearing what you hoped for. It is discovering that sincerity has the power to transform an ordinary moment into one that will never be forgotten. The story may be reaching its close, but its message will remain. The strongest connections are built not on perfect timing, but on genuine hearts willing to speak with kindness, courage, and hope. The final truth arrived without noise. There was no perfect sign. No dramatic moment. Only one quiet realization that changed everything forever. After holding back for so long, they finally understood why those unexpected words had stayed in their heart. It was because they had always been true. Looking back, every step of the journey suddenly became clear. The waiting was not wasted. The silence was not meaningless. Every experience had been preparing them for one simple moment of honesty. Then they smiled and spoke the words that completed the story. "I am grateful that I finally chose to be honest." In that instant, there was nothing left to prove. Nothing left to hide. Only peace. Sometimes, the greatest victory is not finding the perfect answer. It is finding the courage to speak with sincerity. That is why the title of this story matters. Your soulmate just said something they never expected to say. The surprise was never in the words alone. The surprise was that those words had been waiting patiently, growing stronger with every passing day until they could no longer remain unspoken. Perhaps every meaningful connection reaches a moment like this. A moment where fear steps aside. where hope quietly returns, where honesty becomes stronger than doubt. If this story has stayed with you, let it remind you of one simple truth. The most unforgettable conversations begin with genuine hearts. And sometimes, the words that surprise us the most become the very words we remember for the rest of our lives. This chapter may be complete, but its message continues wherever kindness, patience, and honesty are chosen over silence. A story does not become unforgettable because it ends. It becomes unforgettable because it leaves one truth echoing in the heart long after the final words are spoken. This was that truth. The sentence they never expected to say was never about changing another person. It was about changing themselves. For so long, they believed that silence was strength. But they discovered something far more powerful. Honesty is the greatest form of courage. When they finally spoke, they didn't feel fear. They felt freedom. The weight they had carried for so long quietly disappeared. Every unanswered question found peace. Every uncertain thought found direction. And every memory became a reminder that even the longest journey can lead to a beautiful moment of clarity. They softly smiled and said, "I no longer want my heart to hide behind silence." Those words became the turning point they would never forget. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were genuine. Sometimes life waits patiently for us to become the person who is finally ready to speak with complete honesty. Perhaps that is the real message behind this entire journey. The most meaningful words are often the ones we never imagined ourselves saying. Yet once they are spoken, everything begins to make sense. As this story comes to its final pages, remember this. True connections are strengthened by kindness. Hope grows through patience. And the greatest surprises often arrive in the quietest moments. The words they never expected to say became the beginning of a brighter tomorrow and a reminder that an honest heart always finds its voice. Every unforgettable story leaves behind one final lesson. Not because it promises the impossible, but because it reveals a truth that was hidden in plain sight from the very beginning. As the journey reached its final moments, everything became clear. The words they never expected to say were never an accident. They were the result of every lesson, every challenge, every moment of reflection, and every quiet hope that had grown stronger over time. Then, with complete peace in their heart, they spoke one last sentence. "I am no longer afraid to be honest about what truly matters." Nothing extraordinary happened around them. Yet inside, everything changed. The burden of silence disappeared. The uncertainty faded. And for the first time in a long time, the future felt brighter than the past. That is the hidden meaning behind this story. The greatest breakthroughs rarely begin with loud celebrations. They begin with a single honest sentence. Sometimes the words we fear speaking become the very words that lead us toward clarity, growth, and peace. Perhaps that is why this moment feels so unforgettable. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. As this story closes, carry this thought with you. Honesty has the power to transform hesitation into confidence. Kindness has the power to heal what silence never could. And the most meaningful conversations begin when we choose truth over fear. The sentence they never expected to say became the sentence that changed everything, not by rewriting the past, but by opening the door to a hopeful new beginning. And sometimes, that is the most remarkable ending of all. As the final chapter unfolds, one truth remains brighter than every question that came before it. The words they never expected to say were never waiting for the perfect moment. They were waiting for the right heart. After every silence, every memory, and every lesson, they finally understood that genuine feelings never lose their value. They simply wait for the courage to be expressed. With complete peace, they looked forward instead of backward. Then they quietly said, "Thank you for teaching me that honesty is always worth choosing." Those words carried no regret. Only gratitude. Only hope. Only the quiet confidence that comes from finally living with an open heart. In that moment, they realized something extraordinary. The greatest change had not happened around them. It had happened within them. Fear had become courage. Doubt had become clarity. Silence had become truth. And that transformation was the real ending of this story. If there is one message to remember, let it be this. The most meaningful words are not always the loudest. They are the ones spoken with sincerity. They are the ones that remain in our hearts long after the conversation has ended. Your soulmate never expected to say those words. Yet the moment they did, everything felt lighter. Not because every answer appeared at once, but because truth always brings peace where uncertainty once lived. And so this journey comes to a close, not with a dramatic ending, but with something far more lasting. A reminder that honesty, kindness, patience, and hope can turn an ordinary moment into a memory that stays with us forever. Some stories end with applause. The best stories end with understanding. And this one will always be remembered for the simple sentence that changed everything. I finally found the courage to say what my heart had known all along. One final realization remained. It was not hidden in a grand event. It was hidden in a single choice. After every unanswered thought and every quiet moment, they finally understood that the words they never expected to say had been waiting inside them all along. Not because they were difficult. Because they were deeply true. They looked ahead with calm confidence and gently said, "I choose honesty over silence." In that instant, the journey felt complete. The past no longer demanded explanations. The future no longer felt uncertain. Everything came together through one simple truth: the heart becomes lighter when it no longer hides. That is what made this story unforgettable. It was never about dramatic moments. It was about finding the courage to speak with kindness, patience, and sincerity. Sometimes, the words we fear the most become the words that bring the greatest peace. And sometimes, the greatest surprise is realizing that the strength you were searching for had been within you from the very beginning. If this story has meant something to you, carry its message with you. Be honest when honesty matters. Be patient when life asks you to wait. Be kind when you have the chance. Because the most meaningful conversations are the ones that come from a genuine heart. The title of this journey was never just a sentence. Your soulmate just said something they never expected to say. And in the end, those unexpected words became a reminder that truth, spoken with compassion, has the power to change a heart forever. The journey ends here, but its message will remain long after these final words are spoken. What began as a mystery became a story of courage. What began with silence ended with honesty. The words they never expected to say were not extraordinary because they were dramatic. They were extraordinary because they were real. After carrying them for so long, they finally smiled with complete peace and said, "My heart no longer needs to hide." That simple sentence became the answer they had been searching for all along. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the time that had passed. Not the doubts that once filled their mind. Only the freedom that comes from speaking the truth with kindness. Every chapter of this journey had been leading here. Every pause. Every memory. Every quiet moment. They were all preparing one heart to find its voice. And when that voice finally spoke, it did not bring confusion. It brought clarity. It did not create fear. It created peace. That is the true meaning behind this story. Sometimes the greatest surprise is not discovering someone else's feelings. It is discovering your own courage. The title was never about impossible promises. It was about a moment of honesty powerful enough to change the direction of a heart. Your soulmate just said something they never expected to say. Those words became more than a sentence. They became a new beginning built on sincerity, hope, and trust. As this story comes to its final line, remember this. The most unforgettable moments are created when honesty replaces hesitation. The strongest hearts are not the loudest. They are the ones willing to speak with compassion when it matters most. And sometimes, one genuine sentence is all it takes to turn an ordinary day into a memory that lasts forever.